Like the bread, little birdie.
All right, you're going to take 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast into a cup of warm water. It should be warm enough that when you touch it with your finger, you can leave it in there for a minute. Here we're going to see the yeast blooming. To a separate bowl, you're going to add a cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter or margarine, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, a tablespoon of salt, and you're going to mix that together. After about 10 minutes, you're going to want to add it to your yeast, which has bloomed. I'm trying to be gentle here because I don't want a bunch of splashing. Yeah, all told, is a fairly easy recipe. It's really hard to mess this one up. I know people are scared of bread. Take about a half a cup of flour and sift it in. And we're going to kind of incorporate that a little bit. Just get that yeast working right away. It's already eating the sugar you're adding in the flour. So then we're going to do the other half of the cup, sift it in, and get that mixed in. Once that starts to sort of incorporate, we're going to go ahead and add about 3.5 to 4 more cups of flour to this mix. And stir that in. You're going to want to add flour until the dough begins to, they call it like a shaggy dough. It is a dough. It's not liquidy anymore. It'll start to clump. It takes a fair amount of mixing once you do get all the flour in there, about 10 minutes more or less. If you're putting this into a stand mixer, which you can do, you're going to put it on medium once you get all the ingredients in there for about 6 minutes. So obviously I'm jumping some cuts here to speed things along, but you'll see that, it starts to thicken up. There's less liquid visible. You'll get some flour collecting up on the sides. Try to incorporate that as much as possible. This wouldn't be spice bread without spices, so for our spice mix, we're going to use 5 tablespoons of caraway seed, 3 tablespoons of anise seed, 3 tablespoons of fennel seed, 1 tablespoon of coriander seed, and then I think I did 2 tablespoons of dried lemon zest, ground that up, just to give it a little bit of brightness in the bread. When you grind these up, you're going to want to use 1 to 3 tablespoons per loaf of bread that you make. And this recipe makes 2 loaves of bread. So as I'm putting these in here, once I get the spice mixture made, I'll put about 5 or 6 teaspoons right into the mix. And you want to put this in when you're done with the stirring, but before you do the kneading. So once you've stirred it all, incorporated it into that shaggy dough, add your spice mix, stir it a little bit more to incorporate that, and that's when you're ready to take your dough out. Plop your dough out onto the table and begin kneading. For those of you playing along at home, I also made this recipe in the game, wherein you need to be level 5 in order to learn to cook in the first place. It is a very basic cooking recipe. You learn it at level 1. However, I started a brand new character. I started at level 1. I had to get to 5 in order to do it. So a little supercut here of running into the mines and killing some kobolds in order to level up as I'm kneading out this dough. You're going to want to knead the dough. You're basically trying to get all of the air out of the middle of the dough. It takes about 10 minutes to do. If you have any questions about the cook or you make it yourself, feel free to tag me on Twitter at Sword and Spatula. I would love to see what you make or answer any questions you have. Once that dough's kneaded up, you're going to put some oil in a bowl. Make sure you coat the bowl real well. You're going to put that dough into the bowl and then roll the dough around so that the dough ball also gets coated in the oil. And then you're going to want to cover that bowl up, either with sort of a damp towel, or in my case, I believe I used plastic wrap to cover it. And then you're going to want to let that sit. And I let this sit here. This supercut we're watching took about an hour. You just kind of want to get it airtight so that the dough has time to rise. Humidity, warmth, the dough ball will rise. It'll get to, they say, about doubled in size. Mine got, like 1.5 to 2 times. You see it get bigger here. Once the dough is risen, you're going to, like I said, about an hour, you're going to want to take it out of the bowl and flour your working surface, just so it doesn't stick to whatever you're shaping it out on. So you're going to flour the working surface, get the dough onto the working surface, and cut it in half. You're going to get a knife, or I think I used a bench scraper for this. You're just going to cut that dough into 2 separate little pieces, straight in half, and then sort of shape them into 2 smaller balls. And the way an easy way to do this is to kind of come from underneath it, scoop it up, and then shape it and pat it out. Once you've got your balls shaped, you're going to want to let them rest for another 10 minutes or so. Now, when I do this part, I cover them again because it doesn't hurt to cover them. And that 10 minutes was spent getting back to Goldshire after hitting level 5 so that I could end up learning how to do the cooking. It is a fairly long walk back to Goldshire. So here's the supercut of the 10 minutes that the dough balls are doing their second rise, or well, they're resting, not their second rise. The second rise is in the loaf pan, which we're about to get to. So once that 10 minutes is passed, you're going to come back. You're going to grab a loaf pan. I only have 1 loaf pan, so we're doing these kind of one at a time. You're going to want to put the oil in the loaf pan like you did with the bowl. Make sure the loaf pan is coated. And then you're going to want to shape the dough into a loaf. So you're going to take that ball that you made, spread it out into a rectangular shape, and then you're going to do a letter fold, which is bottom over middle, top over bottom, and then push it out, rotate it, do it again. What you're looking for here is you want to make the top of your loaf as tight as possible. So you're stretching that loaf to be as tight as possible so that when the dough is rising with the heat from the oven, it is doing so evenly as possible. That's why you want, as you're adding those folds in on the bottom, that top is getting a really tight surface, a smooth surface area. My loaf wasn't as big as I thought, like it wasn't as long as I thought it was going to be, but you'll see in the finished product, it didn't really impact the entirety, of the product. So once you've got that loaf shaped, you're going to put it in the loaf pan, cover it again. You're going to want to let it rest for 30 to 40 minutes or so, and it's going to rise up again. It should at least get to the top of the dough pan by the time it's done rising. You see it's coming up here, that high quality image. Once the dough has risen into the dough pan, you're going to want to cut a slit along the top like this. I cut mine a little deep. You might want to go a little more shallow for a natural bread situation. And then we're going to toss the bread into the oven at 375. I recommend preheating your oven over 375, and then when it's time to put the bread in, drop it down. That initial heat will help with the cook. You're watching the loaf bake as the character also finally gets to learn his recipe, make his bread, and sit down for a yummy snack. And that was a really punchy tutorial on how to make spice bread from World of Warcraft. It turned out great. The crumb was dense. It was still moist and flavorful. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you like video games and you want to learn some new recipes in a simple, easy to understand fashion, subscribe to the channel, like the videos that you like so I know what you want to see more of, and comment any recipes that you want me to try my hand at in the comments down below. Thanks, guys.